Welcome to today's podcast of Weapons of War. The topic we are looking at are logical and emotional arguments. So we shall back up a bit. In 2015, Europe was the epicenter of a global immigration crisis, the scope of which the continent had not witnessed since World War II. Hordes of asylum seekers, refugees, descended upon Europe, fleeing economic hardships, but mostly war situations. Majority were from Syria, which at the time was 4 years into its protracted civil war. Others were from Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Libya, Somalia, Eritrea, among others. As expected, heated debate waged on across Europe as to whether the continent could accommodate such a sudden, huge influx of refugees without its social and economic fabric suffering major disruptions. These are some of the concerns that came through. We have Treaty state law and order at the borders of the European Union, including the border with Serbia. Without establishing law and order, it will be impossible to handle the influx of migrants. That was the Hungarian government reasoning. But some other commentators also weighed in. Some were even more blunt. They called for a tougher approach to stem the outpouring of the refugees into their countries. Particularly, the most blunt of them all, I think, called Minister Katie Hopkins. She held no punches in her piece. Rescue boats. I would use gunships to stop migrants. That was the title of her opinion piece, which has since been scrapped off the internet. This was she wrote. No, I don't care. Show me pictures of coffins, show me bodies floating in water, play violins, or show me skinny people looking sad. I don't care, she boldly stated, calling on Britain to borrow a leaf from Australia. You'd wonder what was Australia doing at the time. She said, Australians are like British people, but with balls of steel. Their approach to migrant boats is the sort of approach we need in the Mediterranean. They threaten them with violence until they bugger off. We don't need another rescue project, she reasoned. We don't need a campaign from Save the Children to encourage more migrants to come take the journey. She added, what we need are gunships sending these boats back to their own country. Once gunships have driven them back to their shores, then she added another layer. Boats need to be confiscated and burnt on a huge bonfire. She added, Britain is not El Dorado. That's a mythical city of gold. You read about it in your free time. We are not Elysium, she said. Some of our towns are festering sores, plagued by swarms of migrants, asylum seekers, sharing out benefits like monopoly money. She really held no punches. She was brutal in her remarks. But particularly, there were also opinions against her. There was immediately an online petition that was started calling for her to be axed from the sun. And that petition quickly gained over 200 signatures. Other complainants even went to the press regulator, wondering how she could be given even free space to air out her views. The division in opinion is what I'm referring to here, regarding the solution to the migrant crisis was growing wider, deeper, and in several instances, more animated. So how do you break the stalemate? At least in the court of public opinion. The answer is simple. Shift the debate from a logical platform to the emotional space. And that's what exactly happened in Europe. On the morning of Wednesday, 2nd September 2015, Europe, and I may add the rest of the world, awoke to the tear-jerking image of a lifeless body of a toddler, face down, washed ashore near the tact resort. 3-year-old Alan Kurdi was one of the 12 that had drowned, attempting to cross to Greece from Syria. He instantly became the enduring image of the crisis. From this moment on, it was almost impossible to logically discuss the plight of the refugees with the image of the lifeless baby boy etched in the hearts of everyone. Debate shifted immediately, whether to open or not, to how speedily the opening up would be and the number of refugees particular countries would accommodate. It was now no longer whether Europe should open up or not, it was how quickly it should open up. The likes of Katie Hopkins were drowned out in the sea of overwhelming emotions. I mean, which heartless person would dare lend them an ear anymore? After all, the little boy washed ashore could have been one of your own. Could have been your baby, your boy, your girl. Perhaps your lovely nephew, the jolly kid from the neighborhood, or your child's school playmate. Everyone had their own image of Kurdi in their own personal lives. This child's plight, now some of the responses after the image. This child's plight should concentrate minds and forces and force EU to come together and agree to a plan to tackle the refugee crisis, said the CEO of Save the Children. Another quote after that image. It felt like the moment a crisis defined by abstract debates over ideology, statistics, terminologies suddenly shifted to one about people, not a Guardian columnist. You see how the debate is now shifting. Another quotation. One photographer stunned something we all knew was happening, but somewhere little known and far away, into a reaching tragedy that demands immediate action. Another person wrote. Now the debate has shifted to action now. It's not whether or not. Another critic observed, one single death and a refugee family have moved the nation to whom 200 deaths and 1 million refugees had remained for years merely a statistic, and not a very interesting one at that. Another one observed, are you seeing the shift in observations now? Almost everyone now sees that there's a moral imperative to help the Syrian refugees, even if this means letting them into the UK, noted another political commentator. This almost overnight consensus to open the European borders to the immigrants reveals the trump card that is often should be played to sway public opinion every so often. That invisible government we've talked about will either orchestrate these emotional evoking incidents or savagely exploit real-life occurrences, just as scavengers would a carcass, as long as they are able to achieve their end of the matter. Always, and this is always, pay attention when public discourse on a sensitive matter shifts from the logical plane to an emotional stance. If you are not alert, you will end up advocating for causes you would never agree to without the emotional manipulation. We are accustomed to this tactic when it comes to relationships, especially those tense moments of arguments when she drops the question, do you really love me? Whatever the subject matter or subject of argument, whatever the logical points perhaps you are raising, you had lined up, there is always a sudden 180-degree switch when that question is dropped. You stop arguing the issue at hand and start providing or proving that you actually love her. The debate shifts immediately. And today's propagandists follow the same flow. They almost never use emotional, rational, or logical arguments. Even when they start there, they quickly shift gears into the emotional space. They seek to directly tap into our primal instincts in order to generate an emotional and irrational response. This explains why they are quick to conjure up labels, unflattering labels, that they will speedily plaster on everyone that disagrees with their narrative. You have heard them before. Conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, climate denier, far-right extremist, racist, misogynist, the list goes on. And these labels are used to sway and end arguments. Once a label is slapped on you, say, for example, anti-vaxxer, one, naturally you will want to firstly prove that you are not an anti-vaxxer before you get into the meat of the argument or the discussion at hand. Two, once the label is slapped on you, a huge chunk of the audience you are trying to appeal to will immediately switch off. Three, many will disassociate from you. Who wants to stay in their squeaky clean image by keeping company with a merchant of unproven theories? Understand? So immediately you are isolated. Yet, ideally, this is natural. No man really wants to be alone. Many of us crave company, approval of peers, family, friends. It's natural. So the fear of isolation makes so many, or leads so many of us to cave in to whatever narrative that is being spread. These people will prey on people's weaknesses. And this can either be your strength or actually your real weakness. For example, during the pandemic, there was the Wear It For Her mask campaign. If you didn't find it necessary to wear a mask, at least you ought to have done it for your mom. That was the implication. It is natural for every sensible person to desire protection for their mother. And by appealing to this, they bypass the logical arguments, landing straight into the emotional space. Now, whether masks worked or not was now secondary. You just had to wear it for her. Because now it was a matter, an emotional matter, no longer logical. This campaign cleverly tapped into the growing vanity trend where many people want to appear to be agents or catalysts of social change, to be seen to be leading social moves for the larger good of community, to be seen to be making a difference. This is how far they have gone actually. A person will give a mineral water bottle and half a chapati to a street child, but they'll record it, post it on social media, and while at it, they'll be lecturing the rest of us to pick a leaf and equally extend the same empathy to those around us who are needy. And they often wrap up such posts with famous quotes. Googled, of course. Helping people in need is a good and essential part of my life, kind of a destiny. And they wrap it up, Princess Diana. But usually, here is the task. The most daunting task is to rationally appeal to someone that has made an emotional decision. And while at it, they will try to rationalize their emotional stance. I'll draw from a storyline. that I've encountered. Renowned American gospel minister Kenneth Hagin told the story of his early life. Born prematurely, he spent much of his childhood with his maternal granny and mom. His father left home one day and never returned. An ordeal that perhaps could have been avoided had the mom heeded her parents' counsel. Hagin stated that the parents tried, and I quote, "They tried to talk her out of marrying my daddy. Not because he was from a bad family. To the contrary, my paternal grandpap was a millionaire in the 1920s. But my dad was the only boy with 4 sisters. They always pitied him. He always had his way, and my mom's parents knew he wasn't good husband material because he was a spoiled brat. He had a silver spoon in his mouth. Everything he wanted was handed to him. He didn't know how to take responsibility, how to be a daddy, provide for the family. He didn't know how because he was never taught." As a 19-year-old girl, Hagin's mom had defied her parents, saying, "If I make my bed hard, I'll lay in it." Indeed, she made her bed hard and she tried to lie on it. Her parents made a solid rational case, but she had made an emotional decision from which she could not be persuaded rationally. This story tells of the difficulty faced when trying to rationally persuade people that have reached emotional conclusions. It explains why, till today, you'll find people defending lockdowns, mask mandates, forced jobs, curfews, school closures, and all the other standard operating procedures that have since been debunked. So be careful next time. Whenever you are consuming news or following a topic of interest, take note when the discussion shifts from the logical to the emotional stance.